going to show you some lovely takedown defense from John Jones here. I partially like it because he uses a quarter Nelson, but I think these things are pretty underused in wrestling and MMA, but we can see it being used beautifully here. We also see Ryan Bader reacts brilliantly as well, so I'm not dismissing Ryan Bader's tactics here at all. We'll actually talk through how both of them are doing fantastically well as grapplers. They're both highest level. Okay, so Bader just got a head kick, and I don't think he liked it. So he's decided he's going to shoot on John, but look at the distance management that John Jones has got. So Bader steps back, and he sees John Jones moving forward, and he decides he's going to shoot from all the way out here. Now, the problem with this is John Jones isn't going to move any further forward, and he's got no penetration step at all. So we're going to see a very bad shot here from Bader, but I think all he wants to do is some kind of attachment, to be honest. I don't think he's looking for anything more than the attachment, because this shot is horrendous. Look at that. I mean, all his weight is over his upper body. He's got his attachment. His back's flat. Really, for a decent shot, we would have needed him to have penetration step into the control zone. This leg should be about here. His hips should be underneath him. You know, everything should be very different than this. There's only really one way this could end. Also, I don't know if John Jones is allowing him to do this, because his distance management is fantastic. Normally, that hand would have just palmed Bader in the forehead. Probably hit him in the eye as well, but I won't say any more about that. So he would have palmed that, or he would have got his elbow between the neck and shoulder. So he bent arm. His elbow would have kind of been here, and his forearm would have gone up through this point to act as a frame. So that's normally what John Jones does. I don't know if he messed up on this one, or didn't actually believe that Bader was going to shoot from right out there. But Bader shoots and makes his attachment. And we see John Jones now, hips facing forward. He's going to sprawl out, and he's going to do a beautiful sprawl. This hip is going to go into the gap between the right shoulder and the right side of Bader's neck. He's going to stop the shot. He's also going to kick his legs out behind him, and he's going to put the tops of his foot on the floor. And we'll go into that for a reason in a second. So, gone too far forward. Whoop, whoop. So we see that perfect sprawl. So let's go back a little bit if we can. Need a little bit more, please. Please, 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 please. Right, so we've seen him stop the forward drive by driving everything down. We can see that Bader's weight, even though he's running with his other foot underneath into some form of tackle, John Jones has managed to put all his weight on Bader's neck and shoulder, and is driving that downwards. What we see here is we see the top of his foot land on the ground. So we're just focusing on this bit here at the moment. Oops. We see the top of the foot land on the ground. And what that necessarily means at first is that if he landed on the ball of his foot, he could be driven back up onto his feet again. So it's a way initially for him to slide along the ground. And then what he's going to do is he's going to turn his foot sideways so that he gets some purchase. At the same time, Bader realizes, oh, poo. And his body weight now has all landed right over here. So really, the centre of gravity for Bader is here. His base is not underneath him. So to be effective or turn this into anything like a drive, he really needs to get his hips underneath him. So he needs to either Khabib it by withdrawing back over his legs, or he needs to get his knees underneath himself. Bader doesn't do that, but we'll talk through what he does do. On the way into this, we see John Jones get his overhook with his left arm and shook Bader even further through. So he's actually twisted his body and thrown Bader even further through. So his centre of balance is even further off the hips. So if we go back, you can see that he moves Bader through even further, so his weight is off his hips. And he's torsioning Bader's body so that the right shoulder is facing upwards and the left shoulder is facing downwards. Bader has no control over this leg now. This leg is far too strong, far too distant. Okay, so at this point, it looks like Bader's going to do something ridiculous, but it's John Jones is going to do something fantastic. So John Jones goes to the quarter Nelson. So he's going to use his right hand to palm onto the top of Bader's head, and he's going to catch his wrist. Yeah, and you can see this lovely, really strong frame that he creates doing that. Okay, so we have this hand being forced down here. We have this being lifted and driven underneath as an underhook, and we have this pressing down on his head. So all the weight of Jon Jones is actually being forced through Bader's head, which is almost impossible for Bader to do anything with, to be honest, at this point. And with Jon Jones' side positioning, and the fact that he's lifting this elbow in this direction, or he will be in a second, he can hold Bader there. Now, you might think Bader's done something stupid by actually going onto his side, but he hasn't really, in my opinion. I mean, I could be wrong, but in my opinion, he's actually allowed himself to do this because he's got this underhook here. He knows that his head's nailed to the floor, he knows that his shoulder's nailed to the floor. He knows as long as Jon Jones has this 90 degrees body position that he is going to be pinned there. So what he's allowed himself to do, he's allowed to roll himself onto the side because he's an all-around grappler and not just a wrestler. And he's now going to try and, we call it Homer Simpson, run his legs around and collect this leg here to get back to half guard. Because he's got the underhook, it could be effective. But Jon Jones moves his knee through, slots his knee through, and doesn't allow that to happen. But you could either say that Bader wanted him to move that leg, or that was one of the options he gave him, or he wanted to grab it. But either way, what this is allowing Bader to do is it's allowed him to take the pressure off his head and use this underhook now as Jon Jones gets lateral with him. So as the two bodies become in line, it means that there's less pressure there. So there's pressure on the head, and there's pressure on the shoulder. Jon Jones is holding on the shoulder. But this lower body now is able to move. So what we're going to see is we're going to see this turnover and him get to his knees while this part of his body will still be on the ground. Okay, so this is the beginning of Ryan Bader start to rebuild some kind of base. So we'll see him shift his hips and get to his knees. As you can see, because of Jon's positioning at the moment, the only pressure on Bader is all the weight is going through his head. Okay, Jon is lifting this shoulder, but in the essence of lifting this shoulder, really he's not having any more effect apart from just putting a lot more pressure on Bader's head. Bader isn't threatened by anything in this position. There's no chokes, no attacks happening at the moment. So Bader is actually going to try and get to his knees and do something from there. So we're going to see Jon Jones react to that now. So he puts a lot of weight on the head, and he's going to move his body into a controlling position. Okay, so at the moment, Bader is more worried about a choke going in than anything else. I mean, he's done absolutely fantastic to be able to get back to his knees to build a base and things like that, but he's worried about this choke here. We're going to see Jon keep his body weight on top of Bader's head so that his body weight is led forward, and we're going to see him start to attack the chin. So he goes to a chin strap. All right, so his hand is gripping the chin of Bader, and he's drawn the elbow into Bader's ear so that he's like pulling the arm alongside Bader's ear, keeps the head underneath Jon Jones's body, and he's driving the pressure of his body weight down here. We'll slowly see that Bader is dragging his weight back over the knees. He's still trying to build his base while Jon's trying to find some way of getting in for this choke. Alright, we're not too worried about what Jon's doing with this hand. Bader wants this underhook here, alright, and he wants to rebuild, but at some point, because of where the pressure is now over, Jon's got his left shoulder putting all the pressure over Bader's right shoulder. Maybe this underhook is going to have to go. Alright, if he loses the underhook, he doesn't have any control of Jon's body. He doesn't want to lose that underhook if he can at all help it. Okay, Jon gives a punch to get that arm down, and we now see Bader build a base with that hand. Now, part of the reason why it's all the way out there is because if it's all the way out there, then Jon can't get in for the Darce chokes. He can't get in for a number of chokes. He's opening his head and his space to get guillotined, but having this elbow out and in the way of John's arm means that he can't really get a good head and arm grip. He can't get a good front headlock grip if in that position. If John tries to roll him in this direction, this post is pretty far out and will stop him being able to do that. So we see him build a little bit of a post. And now we're going to see John see how he's trying to collapse that arm. So he's reaching and he's trying to collapse Bader's arm inwards. He's trying to control that arm. And now he's going to try and get his hands together. He can't get his hands together there. Bader has done a fantastic job of just protecting that hand there so that he can't get his two hands here together for a guillotine. You could say there's a gap there, but John can't see it. All he can feel is Bader, who will move his hand up and down so that he can't. John can't connect his hands. Also, Bader is stopping himself getting punched in the head if John decides to punch him. So this is a great defense against the guillotine, and it's a great defense against getting punched a bit in the head. Not a great defense. I mean, you still get punched. Also, he's now not too worried about this gap because he's slowly drawing his weight back over his knees. There's not a very big space for John to pummel through and get his hands together. As you can see, he failed to manage to get his hands in the gap to do that with. Okay, so he's looking there for the guillotine. Guillotine's not there. So now he wants to stuff that arm across. That's not going to work. So we're going to see John control the ankle and take Bader over. Now, I don't think that Bader is fighting this too hard. I think Bader wants to again allow John to move to side control, which is easier for Bader to then connect up with that half guard. Absolutely beautiful piece of grappling. And if Bader then can get in his underhook, which John is fighting, okay, so Bader's hand now is across here and stuff like that. If Bader can get back to the underhook, he'll be able to fight his way up. Absolutely beautiful bit of scramble, and it just shows that even in MMA, when you get someone who's a decent grappler, they don't mind putting themselves in positions that normally in wrestling we wouldn't accept. And also we saw the quarter Nelson, and we saw it effective. But we saw Bader drive John from the 90 degrees position where he could hold that quarter Nelson to the front of his body where he had to go into a front headlock sequence. Maybe he drove him there, maybe he just reacted by going there, but it's a beautiful sequence, okay? And I really believe that the stuff like the quarter Nelson, half Nelson should be more implemented into the game. I've been seeing a lot of the John Danaher squad using it from back control and things, using Nelsons, and it seems to be effective. They were always there, and they were always used a long time ago, so let's get them back in the game. Anyway, I will shut up now. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that helped. Bye-bye.